I never thought my daughter's decision to try something new would expose the emptiness I'd been hiding for years, or awaken a part of me I thought had died in my marriage. This is not a story about rebellion, it's a story about rediscovery. I was a wife, a mother, and a woman who had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen, until one night, everything changed. What started as innocent curiosity turned into a secret I can never tell anyone. My name doesn't matter, but my story might just make you look at love, and yourself, differently. This is, my daughter decided to try something new, and it changed my life. Don't just watch, subscribe now and stay with us for more true infidelity stories, where real emotions meet untold truths. When my daughter, Emily, told me she was trying something new, I thought she meant changing her hair color or starting yoga. She had just turned 24, freshly independent, with that quiet fire of young adulthood that I once had but somehow lost along the way. I smiled, pretending to be excited, but deep down, I barely heard her. My mind was elsewhere, in the quiet ache of routine, in the silence between my husband and me, in the dull rhythm of a marriage that had long stopped surprising me. It's strange how a simple sentence can plant a seed you didn't know would grow inside you. That night, while lying beside my husband, who had fallen asleep before I even turned off the lights, I thought about Emily's words, "I just want to feel alive again, Mom." She'd said it so casually, yet it echoed in me like a confession I'd never made aloud. When had I last felt alive? Our marriage had become a checklist of duties, groceries, bills, dinners that went cold before he came home. I wasn't unhappy, not exactly. Just faded, like a photograph that had been left in the sun too long. My reflection in the mirror had grown unfamiliar. The woman staring back wasn't angry or sad, she was simply absent. A week later, Emily came home glowing. She was trying something new, all right, a salsa class. She showed me videos of her twirling in a red dress, laughing with strangers, the music breathing life into her body. "You should come with me, Mom," she said, her voice bright with hope. "It's fun, and everyone's welcome." I laughed it off at first. Me, dance again? I hadn't danced since my wedding day. But her laughter stayed with me, along with that spark in her eyes, the kind that made me remember who I used to be before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's shadow. The following week, I surprised her, and myself, by showing up. The dance hall was alive with rhythm and color. The air smelled of sweat and perfume, the kind that clung to memory. I stood by the door for a moment, watching bodies move as one, free, unrestrained, beautiful. And then I saw him. His name was Alex. He wasn't young like the others, maybe in his 40s, with streaks of silver in his beard and a kind of confidence that wasn't loud but magnetic. When he smiled at me, it wasn't like most men smiled. It was knowing, disarming, like he could see through every layer of politeness straight into the heart I'd been guarding for years. "First time?" he asked. I nodded, laughing nervously. "Is it that obvious?" He leaned closer, his voice warm. "No, you just look like you've been waiting for someone to ask you to dance." And he did. When his hand touched mine, something inside me woke up. It wasn't about lust, not yet, it was about feeling. The way the music pulsed through the floor, through his arm, through me. The way he guided me without force, just presence. I hadn't been seen like that in years. When the song ended, I was breathless, not from the dance, but from the realization that a part of me I thought had died was still alive. Still hungry. That night, as I drove home, my heart raced faster than it should have. My wedding ring felt heavier on my finger. My husband was already asleep when I got in, the television humming faintly in the background. I stood there for a long time, watching him, this man I'd built a life with, the father of my daughter, and for the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Emily had tried something new. And now, without meaning to, I was about to do the same. The next Friday, I told myself I was only going back to the dance class because I needed the exercise. That's what I told Emily too when she asked, with that teasing smile of hers. "Mom, you actually liked it, didn't you?" she said. I laughed it off and blamed her for dragging me out of my comfort zone. But deep down, I knew the truth, I wasn't going back for the music. I was going back for him. When I arrived, the hall was dimly lit, warm, and alive with rhythm. People were laughing, spinning, moving with the beat. And there he was again, Alex, leaning casually against the mirrored wall, watching me. His eyes found mine before I could pretend not to see him. That look, it wasn't wild or flirtatious. It was quiet, steady, like he knew I'd come back for him. He walked toward me, smiling. "You came back," he said softly. "I guess I needed a little more practice," I replied, my voice trembling in ways I hoped he didn't notice. His hand extended toward me, familiar now, almost waiting. "Then let's practice." The moment his palm touched mine, the world outside the music disappeared. My worries about my husband, the unfinished laundry, the bills on the counter, they all fell away. There was only rhythm, the scent of his skin, and the feeling of being seen. We danced close that night. Too close, maybe. The instructor's voice faded into background noise as Alex guided me across the floor, his hand resting at the small of my back. Each step was a conversation. Every glance, a confession. When the music slowed, we didn't stop moving. We just swayed, as if we were afraid to let go. "Do you come here often?" I asked, half smiling at the cliché. "Every week," he said. "But lately, I've had a reason to look forward to Fridays." I looked away, pretending to adjust my hair. His words lingered in the space between us like a promise I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. After class, Emily left early, chatting with her friends. I stayed behind, pretending to look for my purse. Alex waited by the exit, his jacket slung over his shoulder. "Walk you to your car?" he asked. I nodded, even though I knew I shouldn't. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. The streetlights painted soft halos on the pavement. We walked side by side, close enough to feel the warmth of each other's presence. There was no need for words, the silence spoke volumes. When we reached my car, I turned to thank him, to say something polite, safe, appropriate. But he stepped closer instead, not enough to scare me, but enough to make my breath catch. His voice was low when he spoke. "You don't have to say it," he said. "I know what this feels like." What feels like?" I asked, though I already knew. "Being alive again," he said simply. Something inside me broke, or maybe it opened. I didn't realize how starved I was for connection until that moment. I felt seen, wanted, understood, and terrified. I smiled faintly, whispering, "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" he asked gently. "Because you might start believing me." We both laughed then, soft, nervous laughter that wasn't really laughter at all. Just the sound of two people standing at the edge of something dangerous, pretending they could still turn back. When I got home, my husband was in the living room, half asleep in front of the television. "You're home late," he murmured without looking up. "Dance class ran long," I said quickly, setting down my bag. He nodded absently, eyes still on the screen. I stood there, watching him for a long time, this man who used to make my heart race the way Alex did now. I wondered when we stopped talking, when we stopped touching, when everything between us became an exchange of logistics instead of emotions. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the warmth of Alex's hand, the way his eyes lingered on mine like he was memorizing something fragile. My heart was racing for the first time in years. I told myself it was harmless, just dancing, just a friendship, just a feeling. But deep down, I knew what was happening. I was standing at a door that had been locked for decades, and Alex had found the key without even trying. And as I closed my eyes that night, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if I let him turn it. The third week, I didn't even tell Emily I was going to class. She thought I'd lost interest. Truthfully, I just didn't want her there. Not because I was ashamed, not yet, but because the dance had become something private, something that belonged only to me. And to Alex. The night was warm, and the studio buzzed with energy. I tried to pretend it was just another class, another evening of music and rhythm, but my pulse betrayed me. Every time I caught a glimpse of him across the room, I felt that familiar surge, part excitement, part fear, part guilt. He approached me between songs, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You've been practicing," he said. His voice was low, almost teasing. "Maybe a little," I replied. "You move differently now," he added. "Looser, more, free." That word stung and soothed at the same time. I wanted to tell him that freedom wasn't something I'd felt in years. Instead, I just smiled, pretending to take the compliment lightly. But he knew. Somehow, he always knew. When the next song began, he didn't ask, he just reached for me, his hand steady, confident. I let him. The world around us blurred again, just motion and breath, rhythm and heartbeat. The way he led me felt intimate, like he wasn't guiding my body but my thoughts. At one point, our hands brushed in a pause between beats, and neither of us pulled away. His thumb grazed my wrist, just that, and it was enough to unravel the careful restraint I'd been clinging to. My breath caught. I met his eyes, and there it was. The unspoken acknowledgement that we were both pretending this was still innocent. When the class ended, we didn't leave right away. We stayed, talking in low voices as the room emptied. He told me about his failed marriage, how it had ended quietly, without anger, just absence. He said he envied couples who stayed together, even when the love went quiet. Sometimes silence hurts more than shouting, I said softly. He looked at me for a long time. You're not as happy as you pretend to be, are you? The question hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't find words. Finally, I whispered, I used to be. He nodded, like he understood too well. You don't have to explain, he said. Some things are better felt than said. We stood there, the music long gone, but the rhythm between us still pulsing in the quiet. I could smell the faint scent of cologne on his shirt, feel the warmth radiating from his body even though he wasn't touching me anymore. I should have left then. I should have said goodnight and gone home. But I didn't. When we finally walked out together, the night felt too still. The parking lot was empty except for our cars. I turned to say goodbye, but he reached out, just a light touch on my arm. My heart skipped. Coffee? He asked. There's a cafe down the street. Nothing serious. I hesitated, but I didn't say no. That, nothing serious, turned into hours of conversation. We sat across from each other in a quiet corner booth, sharing stories we hadn't told anyone in years. I told him about my early dreams, how I'd wanted to travel, to write, to do something that wasn't defined by family or duty. He listened like it mattered, like I mattered. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me that way. When it was time to leave, neither of us moved. The world outside the cafe felt colder than it had before. He reached for my hand, tentative, searching, and I didn't stop him. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through me. It wasn't passion yet, but it was something dangerously close to it, recognition. That night, I lay awake in bed, the image of him playing in my mind, his voice, his eyes, the way he listened. My husband slept beside me, his breathing deep and even. I turned to look at him and realized how long it had been since we'd shared a conversation that wasn't about bills, chores, or our daughter. I felt guilty, but beneath that guilt, there was something else, a spark I couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't about Alex, not really. It was about what he made me feel. Alive, desired, seen, and as much as I wanted to bury that feeling, I knew it was already too late. Because once you taste freedom, even for a moment, it's impossible to forget how it feels. I told myself I wouldn't see Alex outside the studio again. I rehearsed it in my head a dozen times, how I'd smile politely, keep the conversation short, and let the moment fade back into memory. But when Friday came, and I saw him standing near the door with that quiet, knowing smile, every promise I made to myself dissolved. There's something dangerous about comfort when it comes from the wrong person. You start craving it like oxygen, convincing yourself it's harmless. Just coffee, just conversation, just a dance. But, just, is a lie we tell ourselves to make sin sound smaller than it is. That night, the studio lights seemed dimmer, the music slower. Or maybe it was just us, the world shrinking until it felt like we were the only two people left inside it. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. Our bodies remembered what our words refused to say. When the last song ended, I didn't reach for my bag. I waited, and he understood. He walked me to my car again, the way he always did. But this time, he didn't stop a few steps away. He stood close, so close that I could feel the warmth of his breath in the cool night air. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From recognition, the terrifying kind that comes when you realize something you've been denying has already begun. Do you ever wish things were different? He asked quietly. His question hung in the air between us, fragile and dangerous. All the time, I said. He nodded slowly, eyes searching mine. Then why don't you let yourself feel it? I can't, I whispered. Yes, he said gently. You already are. And just like that, everything I had been holding back for weeks began to crumble. I didn't move, but I didn't step away either. He reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. That simple touch undid me. It wasn't passionate or impulsive, it was tender. And that's what made it dangerous. Tenderness is how the heart betrays the body. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. But suddenly, his arms were around me, and I was in a moment I couldn't undo. The world went still, the kind of stillness that feels like confession. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a wife, not as a mother, just as a woman. When I finally stepped back, breath unsteady, I couldn't meet his eyes. "This can't happen again," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I didn't mean them. He smiled softly, not triumphant, just understanding. "I know," he said. "But it already has." That night, I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred through the windshield, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wasn't proud. I wasn't excited. I was awake. When I walked into the house, the same quiet routine greeted me, my husband asleep in front of the TV, a half-finished glass of water beside him. I stood there watching him, guilt burning hot in my chest. I wanted to feel something, anger, regret, shame, but what I felt most was emptiness. I crept upstairs, washed my face, and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me didn't look like me anymore. She looked alive and guilty at the same time. I wanted to ask her who she'd become, a woman with secrets, with desires that refused to die quietly. In the days that followed, I tried to distance myself. I ignored Alex's messages. I skipped a week of class. But silence only made the pull stronger. Every song on the radio, every quiet moment at home reminded me of that night. It wasn't about the dance anymore. It wasn't even about Alex. It was about what he'd awakened, the part of me that still wanted, still dreamed, still remembered what passion felt like. When I finally saw him again, it was by accident. A Sunday afternoon at the grocery store. He smiled, that same soft, patient smile, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. "How have you been?" he asked. "Trying to be good," I said. He chuckled quietly. "And how's that going?" I looked at him then, really looked, and I realized he wasn't asking about goodness. He was asking about denial. And my silence told him everything. We stood there for a long moment, two people caught between what they wanted and what they knew they couldn't have. And yet, deep down, I already knew, once you've tasted what it's like to feel alive again, it's almost impossible to go back to sleep. I left without saying goodbye, but his eyes followed me as I walked away, and I knew that no matter how far I tried to run, a part of me would always turn back. It has been months since that night, the one I still can't name out loud. I haven't seen Alex in weeks. The dance classes ended quietly, without drama or goodbyes. Life, somehow, went back to normal. Or at least it pretended to. My husband still leaves early, the coffee maker still sputters at 6:30 every morning, and my daughter still calls to tell me about her latest adventures. From the outside, nothing has changed. But I have. Every morning, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman I don't entirely recognize. Not because she's older or tired, but because she's finally awake. And that's the hardest part. Once you've remembered what it feels like to be seen, to be wanted, to feel the pulse of something real again, you can't unlearn it. You can only hide it. I used to think infidelity was something that only happened to unhappy people, that it grew out of anger, neglect, or lust. But it's quieter than that. It starts with loneliness, with feeling invisible, with wanting someone to look at you the way you used to look at yourself. What happened between Alex and me didn't last long. It wasn't a love story, it was a mirror. A painful, beautiful reminder that there was still life inside me, a life I had buried under routine and obligation. When we stopped seeing each other, I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt grief. Not for him, but for the version of me that had finally started to live. He never asked me to leave my husband. He never made promises. Maybe that's why it hurt less when it ended. It wasn't betrayal wrapped in deceit, it was a quiet truth we both understood couldn't last. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I'd told my husband. If I'd confessed everything and let the chips fall where they may. But then I look at him, sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper with the same gentle patience he's always had, and I know I never could. He didn't deserve to carry the weight of my confusion. So, I carry it alone. At night, when the house is still, I replay the memories like scenes from another life, the dance floor lights flickering against the mirrors, the sound of music wrapping around us, the quiet hum of his voice when he said my name. They come and go like waves. I don't push them away anymore. I let them pass through me, reminders of the woman I was and the one I might have been. Emily still dances every Friday. She's planning to teach now, and she laughs when she tells me how the class has changed her confidence, her sense of freedom. I smile, proud of her, but there's always a shadow behind that pride. She doesn't know that her choice to try something new set something in motion for me too, something that changed me in ways I can't ever explain. Sometimes, when she's spinning on that dance floor, I see flashes of who I used to be. Maybe that's the real reason I went back, not for Alex, not even for love, but to find myself in the reflection of my daughter's courage. She tried something new, and without meaning to, she reminded me that I'd stopped trying long ago. Now, when I move through my days, I do it differently. I take my time, I notice things, the morning light through the curtains, the sound of laughter in a cafe, the way my husband reaches for his mug without looking. I'm more present, even if my heart still carries secrets. I don't regret what happened. That might sound selfish, but it's the truth. It wasn't right, but it was real. And sometimes, the things that break us are the same things that wake us up. I'll never tell my husband. I'll never tell Emily. This story will live here, quietly, inside me, a secret folded between who I was and who I became. When people see me now, they still see the same woman, the mother, the wife, the steady one. But I know different. Behind my eyes, there's a spark again. A reminder that I am still capable of feeling deeply, even if I can never say why. And if I've learned anything, it's this: sometimes, the things that change our lives the most aren't the ones we plan. Sometimes they're the ones we can never speak of, the ones that live in silence but shape everything that comes after. So when I say my daughter decided to try something new, and it changed my life, I mean it in every way. She found her freedom on the dance floor. And I found mine, in the one mistake I'll remember for the rest of my life. My daughter decided to try something new, and it changed my life. True Infidelity story is a deeply emotional and introspective confession told from the perspective of a married woman whose daughter's courage to embrace something new unexpectedly reignites her own dormant desires. Through dance, she rediscovers parts of herself that had been buried beneath years of marriage, motherhood, and silence. Her encounter with Alex, a man who sees her for who she truly is, awakens both beauty and guilt in equal measure. It's not a story about betrayal alone, but about rediscovery, vulnerability, and the complex truths that live between right and wrong. Her daughter's decision to live boldly becomes the mirror that forces her to confront her own unlived life. And though she returns to her old world unchanged on the surface, her soul will never forget what it felt like to be truly alive again. Thank you so much for watching and connecting with this story. If this emotional journey moved you, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful true life stories about love, mistakes, second chances, and self-discovery. Your support helps us keep bringing stories that touch the heart and remind us that behind every choice, there's a human story worth understanding. Sparkles, stay tuned for more. Until next time, remember, sometimes, the hardest secrets are the ones that change us forever.